everybody is born with a little something extra, and sometimes they just have to find it. A little something extra is that superpower that every single one of us has inside that motivates us and drives our passion and makes us do the things that we do.
We're all on the same team. Let's think about how we can make that team as inclusive as we can.
For those of you listening to our podcast right now, you can also check out our video podcast at alittlesomethingextrapodcast.org.
Welcome to our podcast, A Little Something Extra, with Buddy G and, of course, Mom.
Oh, Mom.
Mommy, sorry. Mommy.
Okay, I'll take it.
And most of all, the Franco Gianni.
Okay.
The Franco Gianni. This is becoming my podcast now, isn't it?
Both.
She'll share.
Thank you for the love, G. It
Okay.
seems like 2024, you've taken a big turn on my acceptance into this podcast.
Right?
You're really living that Gen G lifestyle for your brother.
Yep, because I have a lot of energy right now.
Oh boy,
Got
okay.
a lot of energy right now.
Where's your
Caffeine is coursing through your veins. Geez, yeah, you should probably grab the mic. That's helpful for the podcast. There you go. So we actually have a very great episode today. So we have a guest that is new to the show. So he's a new friend of ours coming from the chocolate industry. And Shawn, correct me if I get this wrong, but Shawn Askinosie is the founder of Askinosie Chocolate. Shawn has a pretty amazing story because not only is he a chocolatier, he's also, I like to identify him as a shepherd. He helps in guiding people in finding their calling in life, their passion. So on this show, you might know of it as There's Something Extra. So Shawn has done a lot of podcasts. He's done a lot of TED Talks. He's even authored a book, and all of these pertaining to finding your passions in life. And Shawn found his passion through the chocolate industry with an emphasis on helping people in that industry. So I don't really want to dive too deep into all of it. I want to let him tell his whole story. So Shawn, welcome to the show.
Gosh, thank you for having me. It's an honor, really, truly. Thank you.
Yeah.
We are so beyond excited to have you. I was listening to your TED Talk last night, and right away, I just started sharing it with everybody. I loved it. So I would love to have you tell us your story. I did. I loved the TED Talk. I could probably tell your story for you right now because I loved it so much. But I would love for you to share your story from back when you were a practicing attorney and where your life led you. If you could just fill us in, we would love it.
Sure. You bet. Well, stop me at any point. So my dad was a lawyer, so I grew up wanting to be a lawyer. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so he died when I was young, and when I was 14, of lung cancer. And I just, when that happened, it was really traumatic for me. But I kept going. I put one foot in front of the other, and I really doubled down on my intensity and desire to become a lawyer. And I did not do very well in school at all. And there are a variety of reasons for that, but I was rejected from 11 law schools when I applied. Wow. And I really sort of gave up on it. And I met my wife in Texas, where I started a career in commercial real estate. And she encouraged me to retake the entrance exam for law school, which is called the LSAT. Mm-hmm. And I did that. I retook that exam, did a little bit better. And I applied to the University of Missouri, and they let me in. I was the last person accepted in the class one week before school started.
No way.
And I did not have a very good GPA going into that or entrance exam, but I ended up graduating in the top 20% of my class. And I think that really is a testament to just hard work. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I just worked really hard. I loved it. I loved law school. I loved the tests. I never missed a class unless I was away on an interview. And then I spent the next almost 20 years practicing law, specializing in criminal law. And kind of even more than that, zeroing in on specializing in the defense of murder cases. And that's kind of where I built my reputation. And I didn't lose a jury trial. So there was a lot of pressure building, to be perfect at my job. And, it just kind of one thing led to another. And I knew I needed to do something else. I loved that thing for a really long time. And then I could tell kind of in my body and mind and spirit that I didn't love it anymore. And that kind of freaked me out because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have any hobbies or I didn't have anything else. And so I bought a big green egg and I started grilling. Then I started baking.
Okay.
Then I started making chocolate desserts. And then within a few months of this idea of making chocolate from scratch, and really no one in the United States was doing it at the time, about 3 of us started around the same time in the U.S.
Wow.
But within 3 months of that light bulb moment, I was in the Amazon learning how farmers can influence flavor by how they harvest cocoa beans.
Wow.
Went back and kind of wound down my law practice and started buying equipment from around the world. And here we are.
Here we are. I mean, like, wait, how do you make, first of all, I just had to ask because I'm a baker. Or I like to call myself a baker.
You are.
Am I? Thanks, Cheech.
But I help too.
Well, you help
So-
too. Yes, you do. How do you make chocolate? Like, I obviously the cocoa beans, and then like what, you said you just all of a sudden decided you wanted to just make chocolate. How do you do that?
Yeah. You get cocoa beans. That's hard because you have to get them from around the world. Unless most people around the world buy their cocoa beans from an importer or a distributor.
Sure.
I have not ever done that in 18 years. I buy them directly from farmers. But so to make chocolate, first you get the beans.
Yeah.
Then you clean the beans by removing debris like stones and pieces of tree, like limbs, twigs, that kind of thing, rocks, and you clean them, roast them. After you roast them, and that's a very, very important part of the process. Really, the most important flavor step for us is roasting the beans. And once you roast them, you remove the shell through a winnowing process, and then you grind them in a special grinder, and it turns to liquid almost immediately. And the reason is because cocoa beans contain a high fat content, and the fat is called what? This is a test question. What is it? What's the fat called?
The fat is called
Cocoa butter.
Oh, cocoa
It's
butter.
cocoa butter. Yeah. And so about, one cocoa bean is going to have like half of its content is cocoa butter.
Cocoa butter. Oh,
so
wow.
it turns to a paste really quickly and not super hot, but just hot enough, maybe a little over maybe 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will turn to a paste. Then you add sugar. Then you temper it, and you may have tempered chocolate in your baking or not, but tempering is an important part of the process to, when you when you see chocolate bars that are shiny and they have a nice snap to them.
Yes.
That is a well-tempered chocolate bar, but you've also seen chocolate bars that are kind of gray and they have sort of a white coating.
Yes.
That chocolate bar has either fallen out of temper or was never tempered properly to begin with.
Right.
So it's about just like tempering anything, glass, steel, we're wanting to bind the cocoa molecules together. Then after you temper it, then you deposit, you mold it in molds and then package it and sell it.
That's awesome.
Or eat it.
I love it. I'm sorry, I was so curious. I know that didn't have a lot to do with what everything else we're talking about.
No,
but I was
it's
so
all good.
curious. And then I was also really, really curious. First of all, I just love, obviously, your servant attitude and things. The fact that you go to the farms, personally, still to this day, personally go to the farms, but that you also give them an opportunity almost to be a partner. Is that kind of how it worked? Like I wasn't sure how the model worked how that works with your farmers.
In fact, I think when we were emailing each other, I was in the Philippines, and it was I was on my 50th origin trip since I started the company.
Oh my goodness!
And from Springfield, Missouri, where our factory is, it takes me about, depending on how I get there, but it's about 40 hours door to door.
Oh my gosh!
Tanzania is about 60 hours door to door, and but the way the model works is it's something we call direct trade. It's not fair trade. I don't believe in fair trade chocolate. I don't know about fair trade other products, but fair trade is not really very equitable and fair to farmers because they don't end up with the premium money. But for me, we traveled to meet the farmers. We help them open bank accounts so we can pay them directly. And that may sound simple, but when you don't know how to open a bank account or find a bank, it can be hard. And so we've done that for years. And we've done what I'm describing, we've done since day one. So we've done this for 18 years. But going to visit them, looking at the beans that will be in the next crop that we're buying to be shipped to our factory, that'll be in a container, making sure they're using organic farming practices. They all do. They're experts at it. Almost all of the farmers that I've worked with since the beginning. So, for example, one farmer in Ecuador, the farmer in Ecuador we work with, I've literally been working with him for 18 years. Now his kids, he's still a farmer. He's 82, still farms every day.
Wow. Love it.
But so we're going there. And then the really important part of direct trade is opening our books to the farmers. So when I was in Tanzania this past summer, our financial statements, consolidated financials, were in Swahili. And that way the farmers can understand how we calculate, this is the next part of direct trade, the profit share. So we're paying them on top of what we paid them originally, sharing in the profits. So in that sense, to your original question, that they're almost like partners. They almost are like partners. They're not legal partners, but they are treated as partners. In fact, even more so, I would say, and I use these words a lot, but so we're buying beans in the Philippines, Tanzania, and Ecuador, and the farmers that we work with, there's what we call a sense of mutuality. It's mutual. And along with that, there's a sense of kinship. And when I was in the Philippines last month, so this guy I've been working with for 16 years, let me think. 16 years. And he's an expert organic cocoa farmer. And we were talking in the car when we were there driving out to one of the farms, and he asked me what my favorite foods were. And we were just talking about foods. And I said, well, I like pizza and sushi. Well, he had me over to dinner to his house in Davao. A few nights later, I had no idea what we were going to have. And there on the table, he had acquired sushi and pizza in Davao. Now, Davao's a big city, but isn't that nice?
Yes.
I mean, who does that?
Thoughtful,
I'm like a business partner, but still, I mean, he invited me to his home. His kids were there. His grandkids were there. It was a celebration. And there on the table, the main course was pizza and sushi just for me.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
It just blew me away. It still blows me away. And we have community development projects in the Philippines and Tanzania. We can get into that later, but that's an important part of our business.
Yeah, because I was wondering, so what would so for those farmers, this is a tremendous opportunity, correct? Because how else does it work for them? Otherwise, would it just be?
They would sell it. They would sell their beans to some local buyer who would sell them to another local buyer and another, and they wouldn't make as much money. And I always add this, we are not a big company. We're small. We have about 20 full-time employees. And so I never want people to think when I say these things that I'm like moving the needle in the chocolate industry, because I'm not. There have been some rare cases where our actions have helped, other groups of farmers, but for the most part, it's, the farmers that we work with directly, and they're called smallholder farmers. They don't have a lot of land, and they work together in loosely formed cooperatives.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So what was like the whole rationale, like when you made that transition from being a lawyer into going into the chocolate industry? What was it that, I guess, first off, why chocolate? Like, what was the initial reason? And then what was the reason that you wanted to go the route of this ethically sourced and this fair, or I guess not fair trade, but direct to these producers? What was the whole rationale?
Well, to your first question, why chocolate? I really don't know, to be honest. I was not confident enough in the beginning of this journey to really say that, so I would come up with some really good sounding answer, but I don't know. I didn't have a lifelong love of chocolate. I think I'm just at this point willing to accept the uncertainty of why. I don't know. It just kind of happened. And I went through a very, very long process to figure it out, and all of that. But I don't know why. And as to the rationale of deciding, as you said, to act in this ethical, did you say, I think you said ethical way or direct trade? Yeah. So I think this is an interesting thing to me, and that is what people are thinking when they start businesses. These days they almost always have some kind of business plan because somebody wants to see it, the bank or maybe a fellow investor or friends or whatever. And so it's really interesting to me to see in the beginning, what were people thinking? What was important? What did they want? And for me, there was never a thought process there was never a formal or really informal thought process of, maybe I should start an ethical business and behave ethically and do the right thing. And then that'll be a part of the business. It didn't come like that. It was a little bit more rooted in a kind of, if I could say, authentic way, much the way I'm sure your business is, and the way all of you are, and the way Gigi is. And it's like that. Like, so for me, I was inspired by my grandparents. They were farmers that didn't have very much money. They had a farm near me in Southwest Missouri, and I spent a lot of time there growing up. And they had dairy cows and a big garden, and they did not have a lot of education, but they worked really hard. They were married for a very long time. They lived on that farm for a really long time. They went to the same church, and they were just hardworking people that, especially after their death, I really, over the years since their death, I've really grown to love and appreciate them even more and more. And so when I was starting this business, they were really the people in the forefront of my mind, and they were not alive at that time, but they were in the forefront of my mind about how to treat farmers, how to honor them, how to honor my grandparents in this way. And so that's the rationale behind it, is my grandparents.
It's just the person too that you are. It is the person that you are, and seeing that in those farmers, seeing your grandparents in those farmers. That's a gift.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't look that deep. A lot of people
They're blinded by the opportunity
Absolutely.
of being able to create this big successful business where they're making all this money.
Yeah,
rather than
we
actually
all
thinking
want,
about
look, you can't
producers.
start a business and do the things that you do, and you all understand this, unless you're driven.
Totally.
I mean, you have to be motivated and sometimes competitive, and
Yep.
you have to just kind of burn the midnight oil and just work hard. But that can peacefully coexist with a nature that is caring, and that thinks about other people, and those things can naturally coexist together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Who is your end customer? Like, where does when you temper, when they're ready to go, do you have shops, or is it
Direct to consumer? Is it you selling it to other business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of the above. So we sell to direct to consumer. So you can go on our website and order, and we'll ship it to you, and all throughout the year. And then we do that direct to consumer in the United States. And then we have what we call our B2B channel, where we're selling to stores. And so there's a zip code locator on our website, and you can see we sell to about 500 stores around the United States. A lot of Whole Foods, not every Whole Foods, but a lot of them, and small coffee shops, and just small independent stores that would want to carry a premium chocolate product. And then we also have a part of our business that is ingredient. where we sell in pretty large quantities, like to bakeries and restaurants that want to use our cocoa powder that we make, or our chocolate to make other desserts, cakes and things like that. And then we have a really big corporate gift program where companies, small and large, will use us to have some customization, not a lot, but a little bit of customization in the packaging, or not, just a note, where we sell. So we have a really big corporate gift program. So that's how we do it. Yeah.
I know that. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
I just had one more question. That just something that I loved that you talked about. Totally has nothing to do with your chocolates. I hope you don't mind. It's just about you as a person. First of all, I love that you help people find their passion, and you just kind of make people think. And that's what that TED Talk that I was listening to last night made me think about that. But I also thought about the fact when you talked about again, this is totally random, but that's what I do. I loved the fact that when you were talking about when your dad was dying, and there wasn't hospice or anything back then, and you had to give your dad shots because your mom couldn't do it. I mean, he was very sick, and you had to give your dad shots, and that everybody, people were praying for him, but they told him, you're not allowed to talk about it. They said, don't talk about him dying, because that's almost like that self-fulfilled prophecy, then he's going to die. And, well, he was going to die anyway, and people knew that, but you couldn't say those words. I thought that was so powerful that you shared that, and that you don't say those words, because it could have opened up those conversations. And like you said, it closed you off because it was never allowed to be said. I thought that was so powerful, and that you shared it. I really appreciated your whole TED Talk, but that part to me really hit me. And then the way that you said having to be quiet like that during something like that stuck with you. And that you didn't, that was kind of buried inside you almost throughout and didn't come out until later. And I love when you were volunteering in the palliative care. I thought that it was such a beautiful story and a beautiful journey. So I want to, if you could just tell a little bit about that, just because I loved it.
Sure.
And I felt like, I think it reaches people. I love the whole chocolate and that it led you all to this. But I do think sometimes there's those moments in our life, whether we realize as they are happening that it's a defining moment, or it takes us 20 years to realize it's happening.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I do appreciate that. And thank you for noticing that it's all connected. And, and I think it's important too, when I tell this story, and to go back to something you said about sometimes it takes 20 years to realize something. What's really odd, I think, is especially for those of us who believe that ultimately time is such a weird thing. In many ways, it doesn't really exist. It exists in our ability to survive on this planet, but in reality, it probably doesn't exist. So those 20 years that it takes someone to realize something could be the same as 20 seconds or not even a second. And I feel that way in the story that I'm going to relate. So my dad was diagnosed when I was 12 with lung cancer. And my dad was a former Marine, physically fit, had been a drill instructor, tough guy, Golden Gloves boxer from New York City. And as I said, a lawyer, just a real hero figure for me growing up. And so this was a really hard thing when he was diagnosed with this. And like I said, we didn't have hospice back then. And he had, lots of surgeries and chemotherapy because the cancer was spreading. And, but since we didn't have hospice, the doctors came over when I was 13 and taught me how to give my dad Demerol shots because my mom just couldn't do it. She was in her middle to late 30s and she just wasn't equipped, and I wanted to do it and help. And so I did. And that is something that you can be assured I've had a lot of therapy over the years about that, but it's definitely okay. And I was happy that I was able to do it when I did do it. But and so the leader of the prayer group, this man, told me not to talk with my dad about death, because if I did, then it would be a sign of doubt and that Jesus wouldn't heal him. And so that really kind of messed me up. And there are many people in this world who've been the if I could say victim, I don't feel like a victim, but who've suffered, misleading by the church. And that's really unfortunate, I think. And sometimes can take many, many years to unwind and to heal from. But so we didn't talk about it. And my dad was in court the week before he died trying a case, and cancer can be a very up and down thing, and anyway, he went to this monastery for a men's church retreat. It's about an hour and a half from my house. And he came back that Sunday and died that night. And the cancer had reached his brain, and he kind of had a stroke. And I was with him. And at that point, I was 14. And I was really just completely terrified. I didn't know what was going on, but he was talking to me, laying there in bed, clearly sick. And then he wasn't. And it's the most desperate moment of my life. I was begging God, please not let him die, out loud. I was just screaming in terror. And he died. And then as I said earlier, I just sort of thought to myself, well, God, I don't really need you, and I'm just going to prove that I can be somebody. And I just did everything I could to be everything. And, I just tried to achieve and win and compete. And I did all that stuff and didn't think about it for about 25 years. And it was at the conclusion of a particularly emotionally challenging murder case. I believed in the case, but at the end of the thing, I was just exhausted, and it was a really long trial. And so I started thinking about these things that we're talking about now, and I hadn't thought about them in a long time. And I went through this process of kind of having panic attacks in the courtroom, and I couldn't figure out what that was. I didn't know what a panic attack was, never heard of it. And so ultimately, I started on an antidepressant, and Lexapro, and that helped me for a little bit. But I went back to that monastery that I told you about. It was a Trappist monastery in the middle of the Mark Twain National Forest. I hadn't thought about that place for a very long time. And the reason I went there is because at my dad's funeral, his priest, we were Episcopalian, who was not really part of this weird prayer group, his priest said, Shawn, I want to tell you that the night before we came back, the night before your dad died, he knocked on my door at the Abbey across the hall in the guest house. And he said, Don, he said, I was just visited by 3 angels, and they told me that I was going to die and that my family would be protected and everything would be okay. And when I was told that story at the funeral, I didn't care. It meant nothing to me. I just one ear and out the other. But I thought about it 25 years later, and I went to that Abbey, and they actually still had the guest book where my dad had signed in with the other men. And so that started a 20-year relationship that I have with that Abbey to this day. Now I'm a family brother there. I live with the monks when I go there, and they're behind the cloister. But when I was there in the first year, just walking along the road out there in the Mark Twain, I thought, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with, the next part of my life. I couldn't be a trial lawyer anymore. I just didn't want to do it. And I'm just trying. And anyway, I thought, I need to go volunteer in like palliative care or something. I knew about palliative care. I need to go be a volunteer. Well, so I had been part of the ethics committee of a major hospital in my community. And they said, Shawn, we really don't have a place for you. But the other Trauma One Center did have a way for me to volunteer. And so I would go on Fridays, and I did this for about 5 years. I would visit with people who were dying. So palliative care is like hospice in the hospital. And sometimes it'd be 5 patients, sometimes it'd be 20. And they would be in oncology, neurology, ICU, cardiology. And many times they didn't have family or anybody, and they just wanted a visitor. I wasn't a chaplain or anything like that. I was just a volunteer visitor. But at the end of the visits, I would ask them if they wanted me to say a prayer for them. And pretty much everybody who is dying will take a prayer. And I would ask them what they wanted me to pray for. And that's where the mystery really deepened. And I would just listen to them. And then I would repeat their words back to them in a way that was the opposite of what happened to me as a teenager. And so that was this place of healing for me. It was a place of joy, massive joy. I would leave the hospital sometimes, and I talk about this in my talk, that there were times when I was leaving and that I felt like my feet weren't on the ground, like I was just kind of walking on air. And some people listening to this would think, well, that's really morbid, to go visit with dying people and then have this massive amount of joy. And the reason was because that joy was the intersection of the place of my great heartbreak and just the heartbrokenness of a young person that I was. And so while I was, not at the hospital, but during that time, I was able to kind of think more clearly about my future and, what possibilities there might be for me, because I was reading all the books and Googling everything. And that's really not the answer, I think, for many people about finding a passion. And sometimes it just has to be, it's a mysterious path. And that's the story. So that's, I think, a very long answer to your question but yeah.
Of where that led you. I love where that volunteerism led you, because I really believe, we have situations here that people come, to volunteer here to serve our individuals with Down syndrome. And in the end, they come back and tell me, my life has been changed forever. I mean, we're 99% volunteer run. We have 63 locations and startups, all, 99% volunteer. So tens of thousands of volunteers that come back with this gift. And when I heard you say, I got it when you were talking about, being off the ground, like feeling good. And because what you had, it was the opposite of what happened for you. You were able to say those words out loud, and I think serving people that you think are maybe like here, not less than you, but that need your help and you don't need help, and realizing, wow, it was me that needed the help. These guys are fine. You know what I mean?
It's the if you approach it, if you have a willingness
Totally.
to let the story be flipped, and if you can approach it without the attitude of, oh, I'm the healer, you're going to be the healed.
Exactly.
I'm the provider, you're the providee. If you can erase that, and if you can approach it, as I said before, with a spirit of mutuality and kinship, then the roles are reversed and you become healed.
Yes.
You are the one that is served. And this is why, Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. So it's kind of a mystery. It really is a mystery of how this happens. And, pretty much every faith tradition talks about this. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not a one and done. And it's over and over and over. And as long as we're willing to be surprised and not know when it's going to show up, but be willing to notice it when it does, then this is what life is all about.
Yep. As soon as I heard that, and that I text my daughter Bella, I'm like, Bella, you got to listen to this. I loved every part of it. I think there's amazing messaging in there. Gigi is going to
hold on. I know, but I wanted to
I
just wanted to get on back to what he was saying
let
real
Franco
quick
do
though.
one and then,
when it comes to by being able to pinpoint that intersecting moment in your life and being able to find your passion. So the fact that you were able to tie that back to your moment with your that time with your father, and then being able to then tie that into your time serving and being able to find joy in where you originally had so much pain. And I think that resonates so much with so many of the people within the Down syndrome community, disability community, but in the service industry, and especially in nonprofits, in the fact that with like Nancy starting Gigi's Playhouse, in the fact that she was so scared and finding so much fear in that moment when she found out that Gigi had Down syndrome, that was what propelled her to then act on it and live that service-filled life. And I think that it happens, we hear it from so many volunteers is really where I hear it the most, is people will come in and be like, yeah, when I was 12 years old, I was in camp, and there was this kid with Down syndrome there, and he was always so nice, and we hung out with each other so much. And then after that, I didn't really see him, but I remember that being such a time in my life where there was so much joy, and I was always so happy around him. And then, you know, they come in and they volunteer at Gigi's Playhouse, and they realize that that was their intersection. That's when they found that joy again, and that's when they were realizing, like, this is my passion. My passion is to help individuals with disabilities, or being able to just be there for someone who may need a friend that doesn't necessarily have it. And I think that across the board, that is really that identifier. That's how people find their passion in life, is being able to find that intersection, and that's really their threshold that they need to pass in order to become that, in order to live that service-filled life, and being able to know what you want to do that brings you joy every day. So when you said that, it resonated with me so much, because I was like, this, I hear this story every day.
Well, and you, with your understanding through exposure, wanting to share the stories from Gigi's and our participants and the people in here, because it's that exposure and letting people know who they are that opens up their heart to maybe walk in the door, or to approach them when they're out somewhere, to say hello, to just not think that they're any different.
You have an understanding.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
Necessarily apprehensive.
Okay, we better let her go, because she's ready to. She's gonna
pop.
Yep. All right, Gigi.
Thank you.
It's on you now.
I have all the time in
You
the world.
act like this is your podcast.
It is my podcast.
All right, get on.
How do you like having a family business?
Oh yeah, because your daughter's involved.
Great question.
Good question,
Great
Gigi.
question. So there's,
Oh, she's beautiful. Oh, that's awesome.
Cute.
yeah, and she just had her second baby. Two weeks ago yesterday, here in Austin, Texas. We split our time into Austin and Springfield.
Okay.
And then I have another granddaughter. That's a grandson. He's 2 weeks old. And then I have a granddaughter named Marigold Bell. We call her Goldie Bell. And she's 3.5, and she spent the night with us last night. And this is her.
Look at her.
Let's see, holding her baby brother.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
And anyway, and Lauren, so she lives in Austin and has worked. She just turned 34. In fact, she had her baby on her birthday. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
But she's worked with me since she was 15. And she's now our chief marketing officer, and she runs the business with me, but she's on maternity leave right now. And so this is a great question, Gigi. I will tell you that it's very rewarding. So let's start with the good news. It is one of the most rewarding, most gratifying things that I've ever done, working with my daughter. And it's one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. It's hard. This is not for the faint of heart.
Right?
My wife worked in the business for a while, and we've been married for 38 years, and we couldn't do it. I mean, she did shipping. She did the shipping. And, I mean, it just didn't work. And so, but with Lauren and I, we do make it work, but it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It's very hard, and it's worth it.
Yep.
And she has my back the way no one else can or will or would. And so there's a lot of trust there.
Absolutely.
But we do have our fair share of discussions.
Of course. Yeah. Franco, do you get that?
Oh yeah, we had quite the discussion this morning. Yes, I definitely understand it.
I love
it. That question.
And the good news is, I'm sorry, Gigi, I'm just going to say, and tell her thank you, because that's how we found you, was through the marketing of her social media.
Yes.
So, and it was actually brought on by a friend who saw it and said, you got to see this guy. I love this. I love this company. So that's really cool. So tell her she's doing a good job.
I will.
Yeah.
What's your favorite chocolate over there?
What's your favorite
That's
chocolate?
another good question. Right now, I think that the chocolate that we make with the beans from Ecuador is maybe the best tasting chocolate that we've ever made. And just the last 3 or 4 crops from this farmer, Vitaliano, have been really, really good. And if you like really dark chocolate, it's, 70%, but it's just got all kinds of flavors. It's very robust. And, that's the chocolate that my wife and I have that we snack on every night. I love all of our other chocolate, but just my go-to chocolate and then I have roasted cocoa nibs, which are really healthy because there's no sugar in it. It's just the roasted cocoa bean. That's it. And we sell it retail, and I put it on yogurt every morning, a handful of roasted nibs. Really healthy, really, really good for you. So those are probably my two favorites right now.
I will try that.
And yogurt, you like that?
I'll try that on the yogurt.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right.
Because Gigi, I think that's your favorite.
Yep. What do you got?
Well, my favorite is dark chocolate.
Yeah, I love dark chocolate.
Okay, well, I'm your man.
We're going to order some from Ecuador.
Dark chocolate.
All right, what do you got?
What is the nicest chocolate in the world?
Oh, okay. When we started, like I said, there were 3 of us. Now there's probably 300 in the United States, and maybe another, 700 or 800 around the world. This has all happened in the last 18 years, the last maybe 10 years in specific. But I don't really have the opportunity to taste a lot of other people's chocolate. But the 2 other companies that I like, that I taste besides ours, that I taste a lot of their chocolate is Dandelion. They're from San Francisco, and French Broad Chocolate from Asheville, North Carolina. And they're really good. And it's called French Broad Chocolates. And then of course I would be, I think we make some of the best chocolate in the world. Right. And, because I'm so competitive about this, we enter competitions all the time. And when there's only 3 of you, you're going to win something,
right.
But what's cool is now that there are 300, we're still winning.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I'm very proud of that. And the reason I'm proud of it is because I don't want people to buy the chocolate because they think it's a cool story.
Right.
I want them to buy it because they like it.
Good.
They think it tastes good,
yes.
and they want to share it with their friends.
Totally.
That's why I want people to buy it.
Well, it sounds like it's working.
So, we still enter competitions and.
Yep, I love it.
And then, Gigi, can I add to your question too? So then, when you're sourcing your chocolate, where do you think it's typically the best? Where it comes from?
Well, like I said, I've been working with these farmer groups now almost 2 decades in Tanzania, Philippines, and Ecuador.
3 very different places in the world.
What's important is that means that I've purchased crops every year from these farmers.
Yeah.
And they are so, intensely focused on the quality of the beans that we receive year in and year out. I can't say which of those origins that we buy from are the highest quality because all 3 of them are just of some of the highest quality cocoa beans in the world that you can get.
Awesome.
And unlike, the beans from West Africa, Ghana and Ivory Coast, which are, I think, low quality, not that great a flavor. And I don't buy beans from West Africa. And the reason I don't buy beans, the main reason is not so much the quality of the bean, but it's because West Africa is just rife with the use of enslaved children in the cocoa supply chain.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
It's undisputed that there are slightly over 1.5 million children working, 1.5 million kids working in Ghana and Ivory Coast.
Oh my goodness.
These are kids that are, think about an 8-year-old with a machete or a 10-year-old with a fertilizer backpack. So most of the big chocolate companies in the world are participating in this. So Barry Callebaut, Mars, Hershey, Mondelez, Nestle, the chocolate bars that you buy at the convenience store at checkout that cost, $2 or $3, mine cost $10. Yeah. There's a reason those bars are so cheap. And one, not the only, but one of the reasons is because they use enslaved children.
Wow.
And of course their chocolate's cheap.
Right.
And the farmers in West Africa, not just the children, but the adults are living on the edge of what the United Nations would define as extreme poverty at $1.20 a day.
Wow.
You can't live a life at $1.20 a day.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason that that's happening is because these, there's a collection of about 6 to 8 chocolate companies that buy most of the beans in the world. And they until about 8 months ago, they controlled that price for over 30 years. Now the price is going crazy, like really crazy. But that's another story for another day.
Pretty unbelievable. And I mean, that's what's so unbelievable. That's what's so great about your business, too, and the fact that you're putting the power back into the hands of the people that are providing it to you. Yeah. And not from children's hands, even more importantly.
Okay, go, G.
Who owns the chocolate factory?
My daughter is a partner with me in it now, but we don't have any investors or things like that. It's just us.
That's cool. Why their name's on it.
Do you bake at Chocolate Factory?
Do we bake?
Do you bake? Yes.
No. No, we don't. In the very beginning, a friend of ours made cupcakes and sold them there using our ingredients. But we don't bake. Yeah. And there's now in my neighborhood, there's a woman who bakes bread, and until last week she sold it out of her house, and now she has a little retail storefront. But she made these chocolate chip cookies that are like this big. I mean, they're the size of like a saucer for a coffee saucer, and she just started using our chocolate. And they're probably the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever tasted in my life. Even before she was using our chocolate, and we all consumed this. It's just that it's hard as consumers to know, oh, well, where did this thing come from? It's hard to find this information out, especially when some of these companies are multi-billion-dollar companies that have marketing divisions that are spending money about hiding this fact.
Yeah, I mean, every single time you pick up your phone, you're using slave labor in some way. So it's terrible, and obviously it's something that we need to be able to fix in this world, but it's great that a company like yours is taking those first steps, setting a standard.
If you had one message to the world, what would it be?
Okay, one message to the world, what would it be? It would be find somebody who needs you and help them, and don't wait.
Love that. That's a really powerful message.
It is.
That's an awesome message.
And if people don't know where to find that person, do you got any recommendations on where they can go to be able to find someone to help?
No, because this is the part. I encourage people to open their eyes and their hearts, their ears and their minds, their eyes, and just look around them and their families and neighborhoods and schools and among their friend group. And it doesn't, even though I've founded 2 nonprofits in addition to this, it doesn't have to be a it can just be this can be and should often be just very simple. Just the willingness to see it and to intentionally look for it, and to just say to yourself, I wonder who might need me. Or if you're a praying person and you pray, or if you want to meditate on this and you say, please reveal someone who needs me, that desire, intention, and prayer is always granted. It's never not granted. Always. Yeah.
Yep. I believe. Yep. 100%. I love all that. Well, our podcast is called A Little Something Extra. What do you think is your A Little Something Extra?
I think it's knowing that I'm loved. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm loved. And that then means that I need to do the same thing. And I don't know very much. I'm not certain of a lot of things. I am certain that God loves me and God loves you. And that's about all I know. I don't know much else than that. That's really what drives me.
That is amazing. Well, Gigi has some tips. She's been listening this whole time. So, Gigi, you want to share your tips?
Just say tips.
I did say tips.
Tips!
She likes to sing it. Okay.
Finding your passion in life. Help others make you feel good. Do what makes you happy. Eat a lot of chocolate. Be kind. Be nice to people. Meditate and think about. And pray for yourself and for other people.
Those are your tips for
Great
finding.
tips, Cheech.
Good tips for finding
That's
your
awesome.
passion.
Shawn,
Eating
did
chocolate.
you-
Apparently, eating
Yeah.
chocolate helps you find your passion.
Yeah.
Yes.
A little. So,
And Shawn,
medicine.
do you have any anything you can add to that? Any tips or advice to give to people in helping them find their
tips.
I mean, it's hard to top that, really. I mean, Gigi's list, I think, is here. I guess the other thing I would say is I would take from the name of your podcast, the name of your nonprofit, and that is that often people are intimidated into inaction, and they're intimidated into paralysis because they think that what they do has to be big. It has to have this huge influence. And what people often miss, but need to remember, is that a little something extra, just a little, it's just a little bit is all that we need to change the world. That's all we need. Maybe this afternoon, it just might be a smile. Maybe it's just not being a jerk, for a minute, or, and that's, this is why I think what your message is and what you're saying is so important. This is how the world gets better, is just remembering that it's a little something extra. I love what you all are doing. And that's the only thing I could say in addition to Gigi's awesome list.
Oh, I love it. And I'm with you. A smile. Smiling at someone, talking to somebody. When you were saying how you can help somebody, I just think about, there's times when you're at the store and, even somebody pushing their grocery cart, somebody struggling. Anywhere you go, there's someone who needs your help. Anywhere you go. And just don't walk away from it. Walk into it. And I think people walk away from it because they, like you said, scared, not sure what to do, and just walk into it. Give a smile, hold the door, say thank you. Wave when somebody lets you in, whatever that small thing is.
And say ciao.
And say ciao.
Say hello.
Oh my gosh. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you and your daughter for getting your message out there, because that brought the message to us. And then it in turn brought it to my kids. And I just think that ripple effect is spreading our something extra with the world is the way we're going to change it. So thank you so much. What'd you say?
Pleasure. Thank you.
With Badiji.
Oh, yeah. She's got to point out that her name is on the sign. So,
All these episodes in.
yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. So great to meet you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much.
Everybody is born with a little something extra, and sometimes they just have to find it. A little something extra is that superpower that every single one of us has inside that motivates us and drives our passion and makes us do the things that we do.
We're all on the same team. Let's think about how we can make that team as inclusive as we can.
For those of you listening to our podcast right now, you can also check out our video podcast at alittlesomethingextrapodcast.org.